Breaking alert from Caribbean Sea. U.S. Navy intercepts Venezuelan supertanker. 2 million barrels crude oil. Destination China. Evading sanctions. This is happening now. It's 9:47 a.m. Eastern Time, 600 miles northeast of Venezuela. International waters. USS Nitze DDG-94. Arleigh Burke-class destroyer. Counter-narcotics patrol. Then intelligence tip. Venezuelan supertanker approaching. MT Maximo Gorky. Liberian flagged. Questionable registry. 2 million barrels crude aboard. Destination Shanghai. Chinese port. Venezuelan oil. American sanctions. International violation. Economic warfare. Regime survival. Beijing support. Everything illegal. Everything strategic. Everything happening. Right now. Caribbean waters. American response. Navy interception. Destroyer closing. Tanker detected. Mission beginning. Navy alert monitoring this sanctions enforcement operation. Real-time coverage. Breaking updates. Oil smuggling. Venezuelan desperation. Chinese support. American interdiction. At 10:03 a.m., USS Nitze reaches visual range. Massive tanker, 300 meters long, Suezmax class, 60,000 tons displacement, 2 million barrels capacity, Venezuelan crude, Maduro regime property, PDVSA state oil company, sanctions target, American prohibition, export forbidden. But happening anyway, through ghost tankers, through false documentation, through ship-to-ship transfers, through Chinese support, through complex network, evading sanctions, smuggling oil, generating revenue, regime survival, Maduro lifeline, Beijing enabler, strategic partnership, autocrats cooperating, against American sanctions, against international law, against everything, tanker sailing, oil moving, money flowing. Until now. Until Nitze. Until American interception. Should U.S. Navy stop Venezuelan oil exports? Comment Y or N. Destroyer broadcasts warning. International Maritime Frequency. Venezuelan tanker Maximo Gorky. This is United States Navy warship. Heave to for inspection. You are suspected of sanctions violations. Prepare for boarding. Legal authority. Executive order. Presidential authorization. Treasury Department coordination. State Department approval. Everything authorized. Everything legal. Everything necessary. For sanctions enforcement. For economic pressure. For regime change eventually. Through oil interdiction. Through revenue denial. Through economic strangulation. Maduro's survival depends oil revenue. Venezuelan economy depends oil exports. Chinese support depends oil supply. Everything connected. Everything strategic. Tanker represents everything. 2 million barrels. $100 million. 3 months regime budget. Significant impact. Strategic importance. American interception. Navy mission. Destroyer approaching. Hit like if you support sanctions enforcement. Tanker captain responds. Greek accent. Merchant marine. Hired crew. We are in international waters. Liberian flagged vessel. Legitimate cargo. Legal destination. You have no authority. Standard response. Expected resistance. International law complicated. Sanctions jurisdiction questioned. Flag state matters. But American determination absolute. Treasury regulations comprehensive. Executive authority extensive. Secondary sanctions threaten any entity, any bank, any company. Touching Venezuelan oil. American market access denied. Banking system blocked. Trade restricted. Everything sanctioned. Comprehensive pressure. Maximum impact. Most countries complying. Most companies obeying. Most ships avoiding. But some evading. Some risking. Some smuggling. Like Maximo Gorky. Like today. Like this tanker. Chinese-backed probably. Beijing-financed certainly. Sanctions evasion. Deliberate violation. Strategic defiance. American determination. Navy enforcement. Destroyer interception. Happening now. How much Venezuelan oil reaches China annually? A. 100,000 barrels day. B. 500,000 barrels day. C. 1 million barrels day. At 10:34 a.m., Coast Guard boarding team deploys. LEDET. Law Enforcement Detachment. Embarked on Nitze. 8 personnel. tactical specialists, weapons trained, legal authority, Treasury agents coordinating, evidence collection prepared, boarding planned, RHIB launches, rigid hull inflatable, approaching tanker, crew visible, watching, concerned, merchant mariners, not criminals, not smugglers, hired, just working, just earning, paycheck matters, sanctions irrelevant. To them anyway. To American law very relevant. To Treasury Department absolutely critical. To sanctions regime essential enforcement. Boarding proceeding. Legal authority. International cooperation. Liberian registry. American relationship. Flag state permission. Everything arranged. Everything authorized. Everything proceeding. Despite captain protests. Despite Greek accent. Despite everything. Boarding happening. Team deploying. Tanker being boarded. Now. Navy alert sources confirm this is complex operation. Sanctions enforcement difficult. International waters complicated. Flag states matter. Ship registries important. Ownership obscure. Shell companies. Layered structure. Beneficial owners hidden. Everything designed. Everything intentional. Everything evasion. Venezuelan state oil. Chinese state purchase. Through intermediaries. Through ghost companies. Through layered structure. Ownership untraceable. Almost. Until Treasury investigation. Until financial forensics. Until patient analysis. Months probably. Years possibly. But eventually traceable. Eventually provable. Eventually prosecutable. American determination. Financial expertise. Legal authority. Everything combined. Creating enforcement capability. Against sanctions evasion. Against oil smuggling. Against regime support. Through interdiction. Through prosecution. Through asset seizure. Everything legal. Everything authorized. Everything strategic. For regime pressure. For Maduro isolation. For Venezuelan change. Eventually. Hopefully. Through sanctions. Through enforcement. Through operations like today. Is this economic warfare or law enforcement? Comment yes or no. Boarding team reaches tanker. Climbing Jacob's ladder. Deck access. Weapons visible. Legal authority. Captain protesting. This is piracy. International waters. Liberian vessel. You have no right. Legal arguments. Expected resistance. But boarding continues. Professional execution. Treasury authority. Flag state permission. Ship inspection. Cargo verification. Documentation review. Everything examined. Everything documented. Everything evidence. For prosecution. For sanctions violation. For Treasury case. Against owners. Against operators. Against everyone involved. Venezuelan government. Chinese companies. Intermediary entities. Shell corporations. Everyone culpable. Everyone sanctionable. Everyone prosecutable. American law. Long reach. Global application. Through extraterritoriality. Through secondary sanctions. Through financial dominance. Dollar system. Banking control. Swift access. Everything American influenced. Everything sanctions enforceable. Everyone vulnerable. Except those avoiding. Except those evading. Except those smuggling. Like this tanker. Until now. Until caught. Until boarded. American enforcement. Navy capability. Treasury determination. Everything combined. Creating accountability. Imposing costs. Enforcing sanctions. Despite evasion. Despite resistance. Despite everything. If you want breaking naval news, type Navy alert below. Cargo verification begins. Tank inspection, sample collection, laboratory analysis. Venezuelan crude confirmed. Distinctive properties, chemical signature, origin unmistakable. PDVSA production, state oil company. Sanctions target, export forbidden, revenue denied. Everything illegal, under American law, under Treasury regulations, under presidential authority. Everything documented, everything evidence, chain of custody, legal standards, prosecution preparation, against ship owners, against operators, against charterers, against everyone. financial penalties, asset seizures, criminal charges, everything possible, everything authorized, everything proceeding, American sanctions, comprehensive enforcement, global reach, through Navy interception, through Coast Guard boarding, through Treasury prosecution, everything integrated, everything effective, everything strategic, for regime pressure, for Maduro isolation, for Venezuelan change, distant maybe, eventual hopefully, through sanctions persistence, through enforcement dedication, through operations continuing, like today, like this tanker, like every interdiction. Documentation review reveals network, shell companies, multiple layers, Panamanian registry, Liberian flag, Greek management, Chinese financing, Venezuelan cargo, everyone involved, everyone culpable, everyone sanctions violation, Treasury investigators analyzing, following money, tracing ownership, building case, prosecution preparation, asset identification, seizure planning, everything legal, everything authorized, everything strategic, against sanctions evasion, against oil smuggling, against regime support, through legal action, through financial pressure, through asset denial, comprehensive strategy, persistent implementation, effective eventually, hopefully, maybe, through cases like this, through tankers like today, through enforcement continuing, systematically, professionally, persistently, American determination, Treasury capability, Navy support, everything combined, creating sanctions regime, with teeth, with enforcement, with consequences, despite evasion attempts, despite smuggling networks, despite Chinese support, American persistence, legal authority, financial dominance, everything advantages, creating compliance, eventually, mostly, hopefully. Chinese involvement documented, purchase agreements, payment records, bank transfers, everything traceable, despite shell companies, despite layered structure, despite everything, Treasury forensics, financial intelligence, patient investigation, revealing connections, documenting violations, building evidence, against Chinese companies, against state enterprises, against Beijing-backed entities, secondary sanctions applicable, American market access, banking system, trade relationships, everything threatened, compliance pressure, business calculation, Chinese companies choosing, Venezuelan oil versus American market, easy choice, usually, except state enterprises, except Beijing-backed, except political protection, those continuing, those evading, those smuggling. Today, like this tanker, like Chinese involvement, documented now, evidence collected, prosecution possible, sanctions applicable, consequences coming, maybe, eventually, if politically prioritized, if diplomatically possible, if strategically decided. Complicated questions, difficult answers, but evidence exists. Treasury collected, Navy enabled, options available, decisions pending. How will China respond to this interdiction? Comment your prediction. At 2:47 p.m., boarding complete, evidence collected, documentation copied, samples secured, crew questioned, captain protesting, everything documented, legal standards, prosecution preparation, Treasury case building, then decision, seize tanker or release. Options complicated. Seizure means port diversion, crew detention, cargo offloading, legal proceedings. Years probably. Expensive certainly. Complicated definitely. But strategic message. Sanctions enforcement. Serious consequences. Deterrence value. Against future smuggling. Against other tankers. Against evasion network. Everything valuable. Everything strategic. Or release. With warning. With evidence. With prosecution threat. Future action. Later enforcement. Delayed consequences. Less dramatic. More flexible. Easier diplomatically. But weaker message. Less deterrence. Continued smuggling. Difficult choice. Strategic calculation. Pentagon advising. State Department consulting. White House deciding. Presidential authority. Release ordered. This time. this tanker, but evidence collected, prosecution coming, eventually, against owners, against operators, against everyone, future consequences, delayed enforcement, strategic patience, American choice, this time anyway. Tanker released, captain warned. Sanctions violations documented, prosecution pending, future voyages prohibited, inform owners, inform operators, American law has long reach, consequences coming. Message delivered, evidence collected, tanker departing, continuing to China, this voyage, this cargo, but noted, documented, evidence archived, for future action, for eventual prosecution, for strategic pressure, against smuggling network, against evasion system, against sanctions violations, American persistence, Treasury determination, Navy capability, everything combined, creating enforcement, creating compliance, creating consequences, eventually, systematically, persistently, despite releases, despite delays, despite complications, building cases, collecting evidence, preparing prosecutions, against everyone involved, Venezuelan regime, Chinese companies, shipping networks, shell corporations, everyone culpable, everyone accountable, everyone facing consequences. Eventually, through American law, through Treasury authority, through global reach, financial system, banking control, market access, everything leveraged, everything weaponized, everything sanctions, comprehensive, persistent, effective, mostly, eventually, hopefully. Regional impact significant. Caribbean shipping, Venezuelan exports, Chinese imports, everything affected, every tanker suspect, every voyage monitored, every transfer investigated, smuggling difficult, evasion expensive, risk calculation changed, through American enforcement, through Navy presence, through Treasury prosecution, some tankers stopping, some companies withdrawing, some smuggling ending, but some continuing, some risking, some evading, like today, like this tanker, like Chinese-backed operations, those continuing, despite enforcement, despite risks, despite everything, because price is higher, because profits larger, because political protection, Chinese state backing, Beijing support, against American sanctions, strategic competition, economic warfare, through oil smuggling, through sanctions evasion, through tanker operations, continuing, persisting, challenging, American enforcement, Navy capability, Treasury authority, mutual competition, reciprocal pressure, strategic rivalry, through oil, through sanctions, through everything, Caribbean battlefield, economic warfare, strategic competition, both sides committed, both sides persistent, neither winning, neither losing, continuing, forever probably, through interdictions, through prosecutions, through tanker cases, like today, like always, like perpetually. Intelligence community analyzes network. Venezuelan desperation. Oil revenue critical. Regime survival dependent. Sanctions devastating. Economy collapsed. Population suffering. Maduro persisting. Through oil exports. Through Chinese support. Through sanctions evasion. Survival strategy. Regime priority. Everything sacrificed. For oil revenue. For foreign currency. For regime maintenance. Chinese cooperation. Beijing support. Strategic partnership. Autocrats allied. Against American pressure. Against Western sanctions. Against democratic pressure. Through oil deals. Through smuggling networks. Through tanker operations. Systematic. Organized. Persistent. Intelligence revealing. Treasury investigating. Navy interdicting. American response. Comprehensive. Multi-agency. Persistent. Against evasion network. Against smuggling operations. Against regime support. Through enforcement. Through prosecution. Through pressure. Continuing. Adapting. Persisting. Until regime change. Until Maduro falls. Until Venezuela transitions. American goal. Strategic objective, policy purpose, through sanctions, through enforcement, through operations. Like today, like every interdiction, like persistent pressure, eventually successful. Hopefully, maybe, someday. Final status. U.S. Navy intercepted Venezuelan oil tanker Maximo Gorky, 2 million barrels crude oil. Destination China. Sanctions evasion. Coast Guard boarding. Evidence collected. Documentation copied. Cargo verified. Venezuelan crude confirmed. Chinese involvement documented. Sanctions violations proven. Treasury prosecution prepared. But tanker released. This voyage. This time. Evidence archived. Future consequences. Strategic patience. American enforcement. Comprehensive sanctions. Global reach. Financial dominance. Everything leveraged. Against Venezuelan regime. Against Chinese support. Against sanctions evasion. Through Navy interdiction. Through Treasury prosecution. Through persistent pressure. Some tankers stopped. Some networks disrupted. Some revenue denied. But some continuing. Some evading. Some smuggling. Like today. Like this tanker. Like persistent competition. American enforcement. Chinese support. Venezuelan desperation. Caribbean operations. Economic warfare. Strategic competition. Through oil. Through sanctions. Through everything. Continuing. Persisting. Competing. Forever, probably. This is sanctions warfare. This is economic competition. This is strategic rivalry. Through tanker interdictions. Through oil smuggling. Through persistent pressure. American determination. Regime resistance. Chinese support. Mutual competition. Indefinite duration. Uncertain outcome. But continuing. Always. Necessarily. Strategically. The answer? B. Approximately 500,000 barrels per day. Venezuelan oil reaches China through sanctions evasion. Ship-to-ship transfers. Ghost tankers. False documentation. Complex networks. Chinese support. Everything enabling. Everything smuggling. Everything illegal. Under American law, anyway. Continuing despite enforcement. Despite interdictions. Despite prosecutions. Because profits enormous. Because regime desperate. Because China supporting. Smuggling persisting. American interdicting. Forever competition, probably. Should Navy seize Venezuelan oil tankers? Will Chinese support continue? Can sanctions evasion be stopped? Hit like if you want real-time sanctions coverage. Subscribe to Navy Alert, where maritime news breaks first. Oil smuggling. Sanctions enforcement. Venezuelan crisis. Chinese support. Economic warfare. All covered. All reported. All analyzed. This is what we do. This is why we matter. This is Navy Alert.